generalizations of that lexeme in language. So these are the words, and we have the lexeme that gathers all the features of the given words. Lexemes include words. It includes words and idioms. Why? Why do you think they include words and idioms?
Professor?
Yes, Liman?
Sometimes idioms form just one meaning. The whole idiom form just one meaning, as a word does, sorry.
Yes, that's basically the idea, Liman. And I would say it's basically all the time. When it comes to words, if you think about it, well, I think we have said that before. We cannot really list sentences in dictionaries, but we can list words in dictionaries because each word will have normally one basic meaning, and then maybe we can use it in different situations, but the core meaning will still be the same. The same goes for idioms. The idiom will always have its same meaning. In different contexts, it will still have the same meaning, the same basic meaning, but it can change slightly. This does not happen for sentences or different clauses or any other linguistic elements. So we can have words and idioms in dictionaries. So they are part of our knowledge of the language. They are part of the lexeme. They are stored as they are, both words and idioms. If you think about it, the word, as Sliman has said, means mainly one thing, and the same thing for the idiom. It means mainly one thing, one meaning, and we cannot really compose its meaning. Then we have content words, which have semantic relations outside of language. We have seen content words before, and we have said that these are words that mean something in the outside world, and we have given the example of, let's say, a dog or a cat or a table or anything. Okay, so they refer to something outside of language. And we have function words, which basically contribute grammatical meaning. So, and we have seen that too. Can someone give me an example of function words? Yes, Sliman?
For example, conjunction or prepositions or for, that, under, above. All of them are function words.
Yes. Thank you, Sliman. So that's basically the idea. Yes, so content words refer to something outside of language, but function words basically really only contribute grammatical meaning. We have also seen some forms of grammatical contribution of content words. If you remember that, can someone remind me of that? Sometimes we have content words like for instance, dog or dogs, and we have talked about their grammatical contribution or their contribution to the meaning. So the contribution of the grammar to the meaning. We have just talked about tense, and we have talked about singular and plural. So if it is singular, it means something. If it is plural, you know that the meaning has changed. The same thing for the present and the past. They contribute some sort of meaning. So we'll have to keep that in mind too when analyzing sentences and words. So far, what we have done, we have seen these elements before, and we have basically gathered general information of how to use them in analysis. But as you can see, basically, each element means something independently, and then we add that meaning to the others. Normally, that's what we used to do so far. Now we will try to move a step forward. But before doing that, let's maybe talk about another aspect of morpheme, maybe just reviewing what we have seen about lexemes. So the first thing, lexemes, like what we have just said, they perform some kind of relation to phenomena outside of language. We have seen that. Relation to people's feelings and attitudes. So what's the difference between the first one and the second one, if you think about it? What we have, yes? Yes, Liman?
I think here we are implicitly talking about connotation and denotation. The relation of phenomena outside the language, we are talking about denotation. And the relation to people's feelings and attitudes, it is about connotation.
Yes, in a sense, Liman, we can see it in that way. We can. But if you think about it, when we talked about content words, and we said that they have semantic relations outside of language, and people, I think, would normally agree on that without really thinking about it. But if you think about it again, if I am talking about sadness normally, it means something. But is it something that exists in the outside world normally? No. So it refers to something that's related to people's feelings and attitudes. If I say I am shy, if I say I'm angry, if I say, so that's angry, that word means something that's related to people's feelings and attitudes, or it can be related to, like in the first part, phenomena outside language, like objects, for instance, tables, and people, for instance, James, and so on, events, even events. When we say a birthday or a wedding or something like that, or a war, that's an event that's in the outside world, but it can also refer to people's feelings and attitudes. So we are just being more specific. And finally, and that's what we are concerned with here, this will be basically our concern from now on. How do lexemes relate to each other? How do elements of meaning relate to other elements of meaning? So that will be our concern from now on. So to put things into in context again, so we have seen how to analyze each element independently. Now we are going to see how elements function in relation to each other. So that's what we will be doing from now on. Okay. So we have reference and we have denotation, and the relationship is not really as simple as it seems. So let's start with some false conceptions about meaning. So so things that we get wrong about our understanding of meaning. So as we learn our first words in association with observable items, we tend to believe that. So this is normally how we learn language. We will talk about this again today. But now, basically, this is how it begins. The way we learn language, I think we have, I know, not really. So we have, I think, discussed this. You must have discussed this idea, I think, in applied linguistics or psycholinguistics. So the first step is to see things and give them names. Normally, this is how things happen. This is how children learn language in the first place. They see things and they know that each thing means something. That's why the first question that a child asks is what? What? So what is this? What is that? And what is that? So that's the first question, and this leads to a wrong assumption, which is that languages consist of a large number of words, and each of these words has a direct correlation with something outside of language. So do you agree or disagree with this assumption? Languages consist of a large number of words, and each of these words has a direct correlation with something outside of language. Knowing that something outside of language includes what's in the outside world and maybe our feelings and attitudes. So is this language? Or is this how long it works?
So
Yes, yes, yes.
I disagree because language isn't just the words that connect to the outside world. There are also the words that connect to other words in the same sentence.
Yes, yes, that's correct. That's correct. Yes, yes. So that's one way of seeing things. So it's not just words that relate to other things. There are words that have nothing to do with the outside world, with what is outside language. So they can only function in the context of a sentence or clause or whatever we have as a linguistic entity. Correct? We all have the same idea or concept associated with each word, and that's again through misconception. So normally when I say one word, I believe that all people think that it means the same thing as I think it means. But there are lots of cases in which you will discover that what you imagine when you think of a word or a concept is completely different from what other people think. And we have given lots of examples in this sense. We have said, for instance, when we say a door, you look at the door in front of you and that's what you imagine. But I am imagining a different door and everyone is imagining a different door and so on for the table and for everything around us. According to the mentalistic theory, the bond between word and concept is association. The bond between concept and object is reference. And the bond between object and word is meaning. Okay, to understand this relation, we have this shape. Can someone try to explain it? Can someone
So
try to do it? Yes, yes, yes.
it says the type of connection between the three angles of the triangle. For example, the word connects to the concept via association. The concept connects to the object via reference, and the word connects to the object via the meaning.
Yes, yes, that's basically it. Thank you very much, Yasir. We have, if you remember from last week, I think we have talked about two things. For instance, when we talked about words and sentences. When we talked about the sentence, we talked about proposition. So each sentence has a proposition. And that proposition, I think we have described it as a complex concept. So each sentence refers to a complex concept, while each word refers to a concept. So when we say a specific word, that word is associated with a concept. I think Sliman had given us an example of the word, for instance, go and going and went. So these words are associated with one concept, which is maybe the act of moving from one place to another. So that's the concept that we have. But it can express, it is associated with different words, like go and went and gone and going and so on. So that's the relationship between concept and the word. We have one concept and we can express it with different words sometimes. And normally, each of these words, let's now go to the other side. Let's go to concept and the object. Normally, when we say, for instance, go as the activity, here, from the mentalistic approach, it refers to something. It refers to an activity, for instance, or object in the real world. So that's how reference works again, and how it is related to the concept. If we think about the concept of the word dog, so we have the object, and it refers to one concept. Then normally, semantically speaking, when we have the word as a linguistic entity, it means the object that is associated to our concept, if that makes sense. But we will see that this triangle doesn't really work as expected. Okay. Do you have any questions? No. Okay. So problems of the mentalistic theory. So we have proposed the perspective of that theory, but still it has its own problems. Not all words can be associated with mental images. So normally, what do you think about this one? Not all words can be associated with mental image.
Yes, Professor, it's true.
Yes, can you give us? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, for example, the word, for example, justice or existence, we don't have a mental image in our brain, but we have such a complex concept in our brain that we even don't understand how we formulate this concept.
Yes. So here you have talked about 2 points. That's a very good thing. So, for instance, the examples that he has given, like I think he said justice and existence. So we don't really associate them with specific images. So it's not like when we say door and we say dog. That can be associated with mental images. Some words have a range of meaning greater than any single association, and that's exactly what he has just talked about. When we say existence, I think you can find the simplistic definition in a dictionary, but when you really think about it, when you try to think about one meaning about which all people can agree, I don't think people can really agree on one concept or one understanding of the word existence or the word justice or the word freedom and so on. So there are some concepts that are larger than any single association, and they can be associated sometimes with contradictory situations. If you think about it. Then we have no access to other people's minds. So it's really difficult to rely on a theory that somehow tries to link our understanding to what happens in people's minds. See that or just claims that there is some kind of direct link between an object and a specific meaning. And the fact that words are not the only semantic units. And this also, to some extent, is related to the fact that we can have other elements. We can have, as we have said, idioms. So when it comes to an idiom, that theory, that triangle that we have seen, that has the word, the specific concept and reference and association and meaning, will not really account for idiomatic expressions. So normally it is lacking to some extent. And people not only talk and write to describe things, events, and characteristics, they also express their opinions. And that's also another problematic issue. If you think about that triangle, normally it talks about the idea of reference and referring to something that exists in reality, an object or an event. But if I just say that I am disappointed, it doesn't really refer to anything in reality. If you think about it, it doesn't really refer to anything. It is outside language, of course, but it doesn't refer to anything in reality. So we cannot really have a mental image of that thing, and that relation of association wouldn't really work.
Professor?
Yes, Naima?
I think that the claim that not all words can be associated with mental images not true for all people, because there are some people who see certain like color or like for me, when Mr. Sleeman said justice, I imagined balance, the image of a balance. And for some abstract words, sometimes they can associate with some specific color. So sometimes I couldn't imagine anything.
Yes, I think I don't know if you are the one who said this last week or someone else, but if it is someone else, I think you are, as far as I know, maybe you are a bit exceptional. I don't really imagine anything, and I don't really know. I can't really make this claim. I have never asked people whether they see colors or they see anything when I say words like that. But I think I have never heard that before.
Yes, I
Last week
think
and
that
this week. Yeah.
I'm the only person on Earth.
Not to that extent, but I will say that when I say exception, maybe some people think in that way. So that's what I'm saying. So some people would think in that way. That will be the case. But as I have said, I cannot really make a claim. I cannot really say that. I don't know about the other students. If someone really thinks in that way, maybe I am the only one who doesn't think in that way. So I would be glad to hear from the other students before moving on.
Professor?
If anyone
No,
really
Professor.
sees colors. Yeah.
Professor, you are not
Professor,
alone.
personally, I don't think in colors, but I think in images.
Yes. So when we say the word existence, for instance.
There are some words that I have no image to relate to
Right.
in my mind,
Absolutely.
but some words, even if they are abstract, I have some images that I associate with them.
Okay. Yes. So it happens in some cases for some abstract words. Yes, I think it can happen. For this idea of images, I think it can happen. I have, for instance, memorized an image of the universe. It's not the universe. It's the Earth from the outside, and a picture that shows some other planets. And when I say the word existence, I think of that image sometimes. So sometimes it happens in that way, and sometimes I think it doesn't. Anyway, what we are doing here, as you can see, is not really very practical, but it just shows the problems that we have with semantics, conceptual problems, conceptual issues. But when it comes to the other part, I think what you will be more interested in is practice. However, I want you to understand this concept because, okay, depending on the type of the exam. So I want you to be ready to any type of exam. If it is some sort of paragraph writing, direct paragraph writing, which I don't really like, then you may need information like this. But if it is an exercise, you can just ignore these elements and focus on the practical part and how to use this information to analyze sentences. When we will finish with semantics, I will give you a mock exam and some old exams that we had in semantics. We will work on them. We'll try to give the answers then, so that you understand how this works, and that will be the worst case scenario. I think those questions will be more challenging than the actual exam that you will have. So if just try to pay attention, and hopefully it works for what comes next. One question as we are talking about this is what we have done so far clear?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, okay. So Khadija, it's clear for one person, for Khadija. What?
Yes,
It's clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much. So let's move on.
Thank you, teacher.
Yeah. Let's talk about connotation. So we have seen the word connotation last week. We have talked about cups. We have talked about pigs. I think if you remember that. That's the example that's stuck in my mind. Then we have the denotation of the word. So dog is its ability to enter into numerous referring expressions. Can someone explain this?
So,
Yes. Yeah.
because it can enter, because because first the animal dog has many types and breeds, so it can refer to any one of those breeds of dogs, and it can also be used as a type of as many types of insults as well.
Yes, yes. Yes, thank you, Yasir. So when we say the denotation of a specific word, we are talking about the main characteristics, the main elements that compose the meaning of that specific word, or lexeme, if we will choose the word to say lexeme. So when we say dog, we imagine something. So, and then you imagine all the types of dogs, and they should all have that one thing in common. So that's the denotation of a word. And those characteristics are its denotation and are its ability to enter into numerous referring expressions. Because it has those elements, then it can be used in this form and this form and this form, yet it will still have the same, what we have said before, concept behind it, okay, which is its denotation. On the other hand, the connotation of the word dog is how it is seen by members of society. That's where we talk about the insults that Yasir has just mentioned. So with a dog, I think sometimes it is a humiliated thing. So when someone is in a humiliated situation, so he's acting like a dog. Sometimes when someone is a dog, and so on. Though those characteristics or connotations are not really or always related to dogs. For instance, dogs are known for their loyalty sometimes, but sometimes I think dogs can attack the person who raises them. Though we would say, for instance, I think in Moroccan Arabic or in Arabic, they would say that a dog never bites the hand that feeds it, but dogs do that. So connotations are what members of society believe a certain element would normally have. We have talked in extensive reading, if I remember, we have talked about social roles. So even the word man and the word woman, and each word normally has its meaning, but it also has its connotations, how it is seen by society, how it is expected to be from the perspective of society. Here, this is very important. Word's connotation is part of its meaning. So the connotation is one part of the meaning. Because if we say, for instance, that dogs are loyal, so let's say that loyalty is the connotation of that we are talking about, for instance, of for dogs. So it is just part of the meaning. So it is a dog. It is an animal. It has 4 legs. It has a tail. It barks. It does this. It does that. And it is loyal. So connotation is just part of the meaning, while denotation is the central aspect of the word's meaning. If you get what I'm saying. So denotation is the central aspect of the meaning, like what we have said in first definition. It gives it its ability to be used in different contexts, but connotation is just part of the meaning. When we say pig, for instance, and we mean dirty, dirty is just part of the meaning. It's just part of what pigs can be like. But the denotation is of the meaning. Connotation refers to the personal
Professor?
and the emotional meaning. Yes, Naima?
I can say that conversation is affected by culture.
Yes, it's affected by culture. Yes, affected by culture, and which is part of society's way of seeing things. So culture, ideology, or society, they all affect connotations. They all create connotations. So connotation refers to the personal and emotional aspects of meaning. So how we see them as people, how we feel about specific words. As I've said, for instance, dog can be seen as an insult, while a wolf is not an insult, and they are both animals if we think about it. Words can have the same denotation and different connotations. We'll see an example from Moroccan Arabic. Wife. How do we say wife in Moroccan Arabic? Not standard Arabic, in Moroccan Arabic.
مراته.
Yes. So we say mra, for instance. Okay. So a husband talking about his wife, and he says lamra. And then there is another husband who talks about his wife and he says,
مولة الدار.
yes, مولاة الدار or المرأة, or sometimes I think some
Madam.
Moroccans even say المدام. Is there?
Madam.
Yes. Would you perceive this, the three people, the one who says المرأة and the one who says مولاة الدار and the one who says المدام, would you perceive them in the same way? Or how would you? Yes. How would you describe them? So who would say المدام and who would say مولاة الدار? In your just give me the stereotype. I think yes.
Professor,
Khadija, go ahead.
I think that the person who will say Mulat Dar, he gives a high value to his wife, for example.
Yes, okay. That's one way of looking at it, yes. And the one who says madam?
Or maybe
Yes?
she does many things in home, like she's responsible for everything at home.
Yes, so she is a typical housewife.
Professor,
Yes, yes, Sliman?
your question was about how we perceive the person who calls Mulat Dar and calls.
Yes, that's the question.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
personally, I perceive the one who says to his wife, Madame, as an educated person who know French, for example, and
Yes.
who the person who says Mulat Dar is a person who is living in a countryside, maybe something
Yes.
like.
Yes. So a more traditional person, that's exactly it, Sliman. So a person who would say madam is someone, either he is educated or someone who pretends to be educated, for instance. I think we see that. Or so people who belong to a specific social class, let's say the middle class, or people who pretend to be from the middle class and can use the madam just to show some sort of prestige instead of saying mulat dar, which is a bit traditional, or as some people would say, a ruby way of saying something. So people will not really understand it in that way. Now, talking about the wife herself, she can be referred to in different ways. I think some Moroccans would call the wife the government, I think.
Yes, it's true.
Yes, so either الحكومة or الداخلية or something like that. What are the connotations of that word, of these words? They are related to some sort of social stereotype that says that women try to control or tend to control their men's lives, and as a way of let's say some sort of satire or sarcasm against this phenomenon, man somehow refer to his wife as the government. So don't. I think in situations, for instance, when they receive a phone call and they have to go home, that's where a man would normally say that the government is calling. So it's something that he cannot refuse. So some sort of satire, I think, instead of waiting for his friends to say that. So here, talking about the connotation of the word, it's the same thing. If you think about the concept, the denotation, still the wife, but different uses of the word. So the main element, so it is, she is a female to whom someone is married. Let's just define it in this simplistic way. That's the denotation of the word. But we have talked about different connotations, some affecting the husband and how he is perceived, and some affecting the wife and how she is perceived. Though we are still using the same word and the same, or referring to the same thing, not using the same word, that's all. Okay? So let's move to sense relations. And here, maybe, again here, the essence or the core of this lesson. Yes, Sliman?
I have a question concerning denotation. Is
Yes.
it all the same denotation for all people, or it may be it is changed from a person to a person? For example, a denotation of a dog for me is not the same for other, because my experience is not the same for the other. Maybe I have been living in Morocco. I have seen the types of dogs that is familiar in Morocco. But for a person who is living in, for example, Canada or USA, they have different kinds of dogs. So we don't have the same denotation of a dog.
No, I think, Sliman, you are talking about the connotation. Because if you think about it, when we say denotation, I will say it is an animal, and every dog is an animal. There is no exception. It has 4 legs, and every dog would have 4 legs. It barks, and normally every dog barks. I would say these are the denotations of the word dog. So no one will disagree about these things. Then, when it comes to what you are talking about, for instance, how we perceive dogs and how they perceive dogs, that's connotation. That's part of the connotation. It's another, let's say, non-central element of the meaning. But when I say denotation, I say animal, barks, 4 legs, and some sort of fur. I think you cannot agree. You cannot disagree with these elements. You cannot say that they don't refer to a dog. And if you think about them, they are the central elements that make a dog. So normally for every human being, these elements exist as part of the meaning of a dog. Then you can add anything. You can change size. You can change attitude. You can change other elements. Does it make sense, Liman?
Yeah, sorry, Professor, but let's give another example. For example, forest. Forest,
Yeah.
for me, as Sliman, I have been in Moroccan forest. We have different trees, but
Yes.
in USA or maybe in tropical areas in South Africa or in other country, they have different image of forest because they have different trees, different atmosphere, different things. I think it's not about connotation here.
I think it is related to, let's say, part of the meaning, as we have said. Let's maybe agree first on what we mean by denotation and connotation. We have used the example of a dog just to make things as clear as possible, because you are going to a gray area. If I tell you now that I am talking about a forest, and I will say a large number of trees in specific areas, you can talk about a garden, and you will go to exceptions. So when we would say, we will see this example. We'll see the example of a mountain and a hill, for instance. And if I ask you to tell me the difference between the two, it's difficult for you to tell me the difference between a mountain and a hill. So you are playing in a gray area. We can choose a different element. For instance, as we have said, if we choose a dog, I think we cannot disagree about its basic element. If we talk about a forest, we can try say that a place that contains lots of trees. So does any of these forests that you have talked about go against this definition? So normally, the forest in Ma'mura and the forest in Amazon, they both have lots of trees. So if you say that's the central aspect of the element of the meaning of the word, I think we can still agree.
Yeah, yes, Professor. Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the denotation. And then when it comes to connotations, yes, it depends. Some people will fear forests. Some people will be happy to go to forests. So how we see the forest is the connotation. That's something else. Different types of forests, in this case, Liman, would probably be what we said is definition, the ability of the word to enter into numerous referent expressions. So we know what forest is, and then we can have Moroccan forest and let's say, I don't remember the examples. The other forest we were talking about was?
Amazon.
Yes, the Amazon. And we can talk about any other type of forest. So we have a place that has lots of trees, and then we can use it in different contexts. So that's what denotation does. It gives us the main element to be able to use a word in different contexts. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll talk about sense relations.
Please, Professor.
Yes, go ahead.
Can we conclude here that denotation is fixed and stable, whereas connotation is changeable and variant.
Yes, that's clear, Mr. Mohammed. So denotation is stable, is fixed. Normally, as we have said with the example of a dog. I was also using the example of dog specifically because it's the clearest example. So when we say it is an animal, all dogs are animals, so this is fixed. Then connotations can change from one society to another, from one situation to another. And we have given an example of a dog that can talk in some context, and it will be used in a sentence, in a correct sentence, but that's just part of connotations, of additional meanings. That's why we said that connotation is just part of the meaning, while the central element of the meanings are denotation. So they don't really change. Okay. So now we will have to see another thing. We'll have to see the idea that lexims do not merely have meanings, so they have meanings. We have said that before. So they have meanings. So each lexeme normally has its meaning, but they also contribute meanings to the utterances in which they occur. Can someone try to explain this?
Professor?
Yes, Naima?
Lexemes, they do not have meaning by its own, like a word could not have a meaning until it is inserted in an utterance.
It's not exactly like that, Naima. It's a bit different. For instance, a word, when we say a dog, it has its meaning and it has its connotations and it has its denotations. So it is a concept. It is an independent concept. So it has its meaning. What they are saying here is that besides that meaning, it has effects on other elements of the sentence. It affects them and it is related to them. Maybe we'll see examples, and those examples will make things clearer. The meaning that a lexeme has because of its relationship with other lexemes is its sense. So we have meaning and we have sense. If you think about it, each sentence that we'll produce has meanings, has different meanings. For instance, the elements in it will have meanings. But we have some sentences that don't make sense. And we say that this sentence doesn't make sense. So the words there, each one refers to something, and each grammatical element has its contribution and so on. So it has meaning, but it doesn't really make sense. Can you give me an example of a sentence that has meaning but doesn't make sense? Just a simple example.
Butterflies in my stomach.
Yes, what did you say, Ayman? Butterflies?
In my stomach.
Yes, I think this is an expression that normally means something. So it makes sense.
For nostalgia.
Not literal sense, but not literal sense, but it does make sense. Yes. Hannah?
If I were in your shoes.
Yes, if I were in your shoes, as I have said.
And there is another example. It's raining dogs and cats.
No, but these expressions make sense.
Professor?
Yes.
They do make sense. When we say them, people get a specific meaning, a specific sense. Yes? Who is talking? Can you please raise your hand so let's see who is talking? Yes? Who is that? Sliman, go ahead.
Yeah. We can put words randomly. For example, we can say door, television, windows, on, is. All are words. They have meaning in their own, but it doesn't make any sense to combine all the words in a sentence like that.
Yes, that's exactly the idea, Mr. Sliman. So these words will have independent meanings, as you have just said, television, door, dog. And let's say I eat the television using my dog, for instance. This sentence has independent, so each element here has its meaning, but they don't really make sense. So do you get the idea? So that's the difference between sense and meaning. And here we are talking about sense relations. So this idea, if we go back to the first definition now, words, lexemes have meanings, and they contribute meaning to the utterance in which they occur. So they should fit in the utterance, otherwise their meaning wouldn't really make sense. A word makes sense when it goes with other words meaningfully. Now we're talking about what sense means. So this is what making sense means. It should go with the other words in a meaningful way. It makes sense to say John walked, and it makes sense to say an hour elapsed. But it doesn't make sense to say John elapsed or an hour walked. If you look at these expressions, I think you will understand that here they are not really using, let's say, random words. They have used words that are somehow similar in meaning, but each word would go with specific elements. You cannot just choose the elements randomly. Normally, each word, the idea here that we are going to see next, each word selects what comes next. We'll see some instances of how that happens, but that's normally how language works. If I say, for instance, I drink, what do you expect me to say next?
What do you
Liquid.
drink? For
Tea,
example,
water, something like that.
Yes. So as soon as I say I drink, I have limited the choices that I will have next. I have limited the elements that can occur next. So that's normally how language works. So when I say drink has its meaning, and its meaning normally affects what will come next, so that it will make sense. So it should be related to it. It should be a liquid, and maybe any type of liquid, and so on. I can even say I drink a lot. So maybe breaking the expectations somehow, but I think you get the gist. So sense is just part of meaning, as I said. So we have the meaning of the word as it is, then its sense or how it functions with the other elements of the sentence are part of it, part of the general meaning of that word. So we have nouns and verbs and adjectives, and let's see how they work, how they function with each other. A number of English words can be used in two different ways and mean slightly different things. Let's see the example. For instance, for nouns, Professor Jones has a rather large library. What does that mean? Library. What is a library?
It's noun.
It is a noun, yes. But as far as the meaning is concerned,
Knowledge.
A big collection of books.
yes, we can talk about a big collection of books, or we can talk about
Knowledge.
He has
in a
a
sense,
lot of
that
books.
will be a metaphorical expression.
Bookcases.
Yes,
We
for
can
instance,
say he
bookcases.
has a lot of books.
Yes. Okay. Umayma Salami, have you raised your hand?
A place when you can study.
Yes, maybe a place where you can study. Yes.
The place of knowledge.
Yes, we can say it's like kind of a building or a room for people to read or borrow books.
Yes. So it is a building where people can study, maybe, or books. Yes.
Usually without any payment, like for free.
Yes, it is for free. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it is for free. So in this case, when we say that someone has a rather large library, it would mean normally in this case a collection of books, as I think some of you have said. Then when we say that a library is at the corner of Wilson and Adams Street, it means here we can exclude the meaning a collection of books in this case. It's rare that we would say that a collection of books is at the corner of Wilson and Adams Street. So normally that's this sentence wouldn't really make sense. But the first one, Professor Jones has a rather large collection of books, it works. And normally he wouldn't really have a library, a building, but I have taken the other students' definitions because library can be Some people would have it at home, and it will be a large library, a place that is large, so it goes for both meanings. And the second one, it is a building that houses a collection of books. It's most certainly that meaning. For verbs, we say a window broke, and it means, okay, it will be difficult to go for this. It means became broken. Then when we say Tom broke a window, it means he caused the window to be broken. So we have the same word again, and the meaning is slightly different. So its sense is different to some extent. Its meaning, the meaning of the word break or broke, is the same, but where it is used changes its sense. So it will make a different sense. That's the idea in the first and the second one. So window broke, it became broken, and Tom broke a window, he caused to be broken, so he caused the window to break, in a sense. Then for adjectives, when we say the judge is arbitrary, it means he's inclined to make decisions based on personal whim, so just random in making decisions. Then we say the decision is arbitrary, and it means that the decision itself was based on a whim or personal choice rather than reason, as they have said here. Do you understand the differences in these pairs of words? What we are saying here is that the meaning of the word is still the same. So it has the same denotation normally most of the time, and basically even similar connotations, yet its sense changes depending on what precedes it. When we talk about the judge being arbitrary, it means that he is inclined to do things in a specific way. And when we talk about the decision itself being arbitrary, it would refer to something else. That's the point we are trying to make here. We'll see more examples that I will ask you a couple of questions to check whether you are following or not. Lexeme contributes to the meaning of a larger unit or phrase or a sentence. So that's what we have just said. So when happy combines with a word that has the feature, let's say I will give you the examples now. I will ask you questions and try to answer. Human. What would it mean when it is associated with a human?
It's a feeling.
It is always a feeling. Happiness is always a feeling. Let's solve the first one for humans. It means the one who enjoys happiness. Think of an example. Let's say a happy man, for instance. So he is the person who enjoys happiness. That's how sense changes. If you remember the previous example from the judge. When we say the judge is arbitrary, it means he is the one who makes arbitrary decisions. But when we say the decision is arbitrary, so the decision itself was based on whim. So we are saying that the linguistic elements that occur in a sentence will affect some aspects of the meaning of the word. So we have happy. A happy human being is the one who enjoys happiness, like a happy child. Now think about the next one. Event. Think of a happy event, and try to get its definition or its meaning.
For example,
something
a
that
happy
causes
party.
happiness.
Yes, something that causes happiness. For instance, when we say a happy trip, for instance, it means it
Or a happy
produces
birthday.
happiness. Yes, or happy birthday. So that birthday produces happiness.
Professor,
Yes.
Professor, graduation, for example, graduation.
Yes. So a happy graduation, yes, it is a graduation. Let's say that graduation that causes some sort of happiness. Okay. So that's basically the idea. When we say a happy experience, it's an experience that produces happiness. A happy trip, It's a trip that made me happy. So that's the idea. And finally, a discourse. If I tell you, let's say, a happy story, so it is a story that contains a happy event. When I say a happy story, you will know that I'm talking about a story that contains a happy event. Unlike a sad story, that is certainly a story that includes some sort of death or problems or drama in some sort.
So,
yes.
so
Yes.
is it possible for the discourse example to conclude to also include sad stories, because the meaning of happiness is subjective? Some people find happiness in sad, melancholy stories.
Yes, I would agree with you, yes, here, but I would say that normally, yes, here, could you please mute the microphone?
Sorry.
Yes, okay. So as I have said, there is the core meaning of the word, and there are the other possibilities, the other uses of the word. So some people will be happy when they see other people dying. That will be an extremely rare exception, but some people are like that. So we'll be talking about different uses of the word, and not really. But the general meaning of happiness is let's say, it has one denotation that should normally be acceptable by all people. Okay. I have two raised hands. I have Umayma Silami and Muhammad Mueh. Do you want to say something? No? Okay. Now we'll talk about syntagmatic relations, and simply speaking, there is part of it is the word syntax. And it's not really about syntax itself, it's just about the idea that we are going to move horizontally. So when we say, for instance, like what we have said before, when we say a happy, we expect a specific type of word that will come next. When I say I drink, that was the example we used. I drink, and you expect the next word to be this one, and the following word to be that one, and so on. When I say, for instance, you expect a noun, or at least a noun phrase. So it will be either the book or the big book or the interesting book or something like that. So you see the, and you expect a noun phrase normally. So we are going to talk about these horizontal relations. So we have this element and what will come next. So this will be the first part. So syntagmatic relations are the mutual association of two or more words in a sequence so that the meaning of each is affected by the other. So that's what we are talking about. I will use one word, and what will come next is, let's say, imposed by syntagmatic relations of the language. Happy goes with child and with story. So we'll say a happy child, a happy story. Think of these examples. Sit goes with chair and sofa. Normally, so that's what there is some sort of, as they have said there, mutual associations, not some direct link, but some sort of association between the words. We'll see the third example. Read goes with book and newspaper. Now, if we try to use read with the other elements, we can use read with a story. So that's why I'm saying there is no direct link. It is just some sort of association. So I can read a story, and I cannot normally read a child, but in some situation we say that this person can read other people, can read their minds. So it can go in some rare situation. I cannot normally read a chair, I cannot read a sofa, except if we are talking about the word itself. So I have read the chair as the word. So as I have said, we are talking about the normal meaning, where it would work normally. Okay. Here, just giving you the example of syntagmatic relations. When we say a syntagm, we talk about a complex entity that contains many elements. So that's a syntagm. A syllable, for instance, is a syntagm of phonemes. So it is an entity that contains, syllable is an entity that contains many phonemes. A word taken as sound unit, so phonologically speaking, is a syntagm of syllables. So the word contains many syllables. As simple as that. So the syllable contains many phonemes. The word contains many syllables. And semantically speaking, the word contains many morphemes. And the phrase contains many words, and the sentence contains many phrases. As simple as that. So that's what we mean by syntagms or syntagmatic relations. For example, an English noun phrase might take the form article plus noun, but not noun plus article. That's why we are talking about this syntagm. When we talk, for instance, about syllable that contains phonemes, it should have a specific order. We should have the onset, then we should have the nucleus, and then we should have the coda. That's the only permissible order normally. When we talk about phrases, it's the same. When we talk about words, it's the same. And when we talk about sentences, it is still the same. We should have a specific order. Otherwise, sense will be lost. So it is an ongoing process of selection and restriction. As soon as you choose an article, you will have to use a noun after it, or a noun phrase, as we have said, and so on. And the same thing for, we'll see more examples later. But now let's see paradigmatic relations. Do you understand the term paradigmatic relations? For
Yes,
syntagmatic relations, yes, Liman, go ahead.
yes, it is the opposite of syntagmatic relation. It is vertical relationship of words. We can change the word, for example, the interesting book. We can change the with a.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Sliman. So we can change the with a, or in this case, yes. So we will have only one choice for some words. But for interesting, we can have lots of adjectives that will fit in that position. We can say the interesting book, we can say the boring book, we can say the long book, and so on. But we have a choice of adjectives. Imagine them one above the other. So we can throw any adjective in that position, and it will work. And then we can also change the word book with any other noun. And just imagine a list of nouns, and you are selecting one after the other. And that's why you have said it is vertical relation. We can determine which units can occur in each position within a syntagm. The set of all alternatives is called a paradigm. So we have the syntagm going horizontally, selecting the next word. Then when we select, sometimes the next, when I use the example, I drink, you imagined lots of liquids. So syntagmatically speaking, I have made you choose liquids. Then paradigmatically, you have the list of liquids that you can choose from. Paradigmatic relations are relations of choice or contrast. So normally, syntagmatically speaking, it some sort imposes the type of elements, but paradigmatically speaking, there is choice of or contrast. Most of the time we will have just to choose elements, except like the example that was provided by Sliman. When we have, for instance, the, it can only be replaced by a, for instance, the book or a book in that case. So sometimes the choice is limited, sometimes the choice is open, especially with content words. Contrast here means that there should be some sort of difference between the meaning of the function of the words that I will be using. A number of possible words can fill the same blank, and we will see here. We'll say that the judge was cautious or careless or busy or irritable. So imagine these words one above the other, and we can just keep switching the words, and it will always be correct. So here we are talking about paradigmatic relations, and this is a paradigm. These words belong to the same paradigm, the same blank, the same empty space in a specific sentence. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, clear, Professor.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, thank you. Now syntagmatic and paradigmatic relations, and we'll see this. I think it makes things even more difficult to explain, but we'll see it from the perspective of phonetics, for instance. We are talking about one syllable or a word of one syllable, which is the word set, has one syllable, so it is set. When we talk about set as a syntagm, so it is a complex entity that contains three main elements or three main sounds. The first one, the paradigm, so it contains three paradigms if we think about it. It contains three elements, and each element belongs to one paradigm. So syntagmatically speaking, three elements. Paradigmatically, each element has its own paradigm. So the S, for instance, the S sound, can be replaced by B, P, S, M, and W, but it cannot be replaced by M. That occurs only in specific context in final position when we have the combination of the N and G sound. So that will be the exception for the first paradigm. For the nucleus, we can have basically any vowel or diphthong, and there will be no problem. And for the last one, for set, for instance, we can have any consonant again, like ka or pa or ta or na or la, but we cannot really have ha. We cannot say seh, we cannot say say, and we cannot say so. The paradigm decides how it goes. So syntactically speaking, and syntagmatically and paradigmatically, we will have to go for a specific selection of items. I hope it's clear enough. Now, as you can see, it's the same thing explained in different ways. So just to make sure you understand the concept. So a syntagm is a complex unit, while a paradigm is a set of all elements that can fill a certain position in a syntagm. That's what we have just said. Syntagmatic relations are relations between the constituents of a syntagm, as we have said, so how one word affects the next one. And paradigmatic relations are relations between the elements of one place, one empty slot. We have in the first one combinatorial properties. So the words used in a syntagm should be able to combine in a certain way, while in a paradigm, one replaces the other. That's basically the idea. Is this clear? Look at it. If some part of this is still confusing, you can ask questions now instead of being confused on your own. Okay. So the summary of previous concepts. Somehow it's not really just a summary. It's when I told you before that we'll go back to the idea of acquisition. As children, we learn vocabulary first through specific associations with specific things, actions or characteristics. So that's reference. So we just keep associating things with words, and we learn reference in the first place. We learn that the animal that is a dog is associated with the sounds that make the word dog, and that's it. So we build that kind of reference first. The next step, we learn to recognize different instances of the same thing. So the same event and so on, we generalize. So we realize that there are different types of dogs. And so the only common thing is that they are all animals, they all have 4 legs, and they all bark. So we start learning the notation. But maybe in the first place, we thought there is just one dog, the dog that we knew in the first place. Slowly, we learn from other members of our speech community and from our personal experience what associations are favorable and which are not. So we learn connotations. We learn that if we tell someone that you are a dog is an insult. If you tell them that you are, let's say, a bird, it's not really an insult. I think you are familiar with this situation. So at a certain age, they start telling you, don't call him or don't call her this. You shouldn't call, for instance, someone a dog. but you can use any other element. You can call anyone a line, and it's not a problem. And we acquire an implicit knowledge of how lexemes are associated with other lexemes. Then we get sense relations. Then we start learning how to use words together in sentences. Okay? Does it make sense?
Yes, Professor.
Now, going back to the ideas we have seen before, which is lexical and grammatical meanings. A lexeme is a minimal unit that can take part in referring or predicating. So we know what a lexeme is, and it is the minimal part of reference, the minimal unit that can refer to something, and that can use in making claims or being a predicate of specific clause or sentence. The term lexeme was proposed to avoid complexities associated with the vague word. We have said that before. So we prefer to use lexeme instead of word because in this case we have go, going, went, and gone, and they are all associated with the same concept. So in a sense, they belong to the same lexeme. It's not the same word, so they are different words, but it's still the same lexeme. And we have also put up with, or kick the bucket, or dog in the manger, and they to some extent, as expressions, as they are listed in the dictionary, and they are related to one specific concept. When we say kick the bucket, I think we have seen kick the bucket last year. Kick the bucket means?
Died.
Yes, means to die. And we have said that it can have a literal meaning, and it can have, so someone can really kick a bucket. It can be a normal phrase, and it can be an idiomatic expression. And then the final one, dog in the manger, means someone who wouldn't let people enjoy something even if he wouldn't enjoy it. The manger is the place where some farm animals eat, like horses, for instance. So if you put a dog there, it wouldn't let the horse eat, though it wouldn't really eat its food. That's what they mean by dog in the manger. And put up with someone just to, let's say, tolerate his, I don't know, his some bad behavior from that person. Here, going back to the idea of what we have talked before is lexical meaning. So we have talked about lexemes. Now the grammatical meaning. Can someone explain this? The first one, and in its relation to meaning as a sentence integral. Think also of truth conditions. So meaning and truth conditions. When we say a dog barked, yes, okay, let's see. Abdul Jalil?
Yes, sir. The difference between the two is certainty.
Yes, it is certainty. In what sense?
For example, in the first sentence, a dog barked, we are sure that the dog barked. But
yes.
in the second sentence, we are asking or making sure if a dog barked.
Yes. So that's basically the idea. So for the first one, we are sure that the situation took place. The situation pertains. But in the second one, whether the situation pertains or not depends on the answer to this question. So we don't really know whether it is true or untrue. So the first one is true. A dog barked. Normally, if that happened, a dog barked. But the second one normally depends on the answer. So it's certainty, as Mr. Abdul Jalil has just said, or the truth conditions of the sentence. This is one additional aspect of analysis. So when you deal with a question, it's different when how you deal with a statement like the first one. Okay. then we have affirmative and negative. So when we have a dog bark, as we have said, the truth condition, this is a true sentence normally. So a situation has taken place. But a dog did not bark, it rejects our main claim. So the proposition didn't really take place. No dog barked. So the event did not take place. If you remember when we explained before, for instance, we said we have given the example of the dog has ruined the skirt. So normally there is a ruiner and there is something that was ruined and there is so that's the main claim and there is the ruining activity. But in this case, nothing happened. No dog barked. It is negative. So normally you will analyze the sentence, you will analyze its meanings and its sense relations. Then you will see whether it is an affirmative sentence, a negative sentence, or a question, and so on. For the past and the present, we have talked about this before. We can just add this to the meaning. So a dog barks and a dog barks. You will have to pay attention to the tense in which it was. It is used, and you will just add it there in your analysis. So it was in the past, it was in the present, as we have seen before. Singular versus plural, the same thing. A dog or some dogs barked. So that's also an additional element that we can add to the meaning. And then indefinite and definite, a dog barked. That's it there. We have seen it, and you will probably find this in any sentence that you will be given to analyze. We have seen the definition. It shows that the addressee, for instance, knows exactly which entity we are talking about. You don't have to use the exact words that you have in the book. You can explain it in any way, but whenever you find the, it means something. It means that we know exactly what we are talking about. And when you say it means that we don't really know what we are talking about. Is it clear?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Morphemes, on the other hand, are meaningful parts and cannot be divided into smaller meaningful units. We'll just add one more thing, one simple thing to the way that you can locate morphemes in a sentence. A lexeme might consist of just one meaningful part. We will say happy and guitar, and which are three morphemes. Then they can have one more meaningful part or more, like unhappy or guitarist. So if you find a word like this one, unhappy, you will have to explain happy. Then you will have to add the meaning that un adds to it. Then we will have the word guitar. It's the same thing. You will explain the guitar. Then you add the est to it and you explain that additional meaning. Or you can even combine the two at once, maybe depending on the situation. Okay. Now we'll talk about homonymy. As I have said, we will cover one chapter each week. So I am going to the chapter until it ends. Hopefully you have read the chapter at home, so that this doesn't seem like too much for you. So for homonymy, can someone explain homonymy to me?
Professor?
Yes, Ismail.
Homonymy means one form that has two or more meanings that are unrelated.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly the definition I expect. In homonyms such as bank, a financial institution, and bank, the edge of a stream, pronunciation and spelling are identical, but meanings are unrelated. It is that unrelated is in blue, and it is underlined, and it is in bold, because you will have to keep it in mind. There is no relationship between the word bank, which is the financial institution, and the other one, bank, like the bank of a river. They have nothing to do with each other. That's a central element here. Here we can talk about total homonymy. In this case, we can talk about total homonymy. So completely the same in terms of pronunciation, in terms of orthography, and completely different in meaning. Partial homonymy is when two lexemes with different and related meanings coincide in some grammatical forms. Can someone explain this if you have read the chapter? Or for those who have read the chapter? So
Yes.
when two lexemes, yes? Simon?
I think it's about, like, for example, seen as a past participle of the verb see, and seen, which is the scenery, the theater scene, for example.
Yes.
Is it not?
Yes, in a sense, it's related to that. Yeah, it's related to that. So sometimes, when just one form of the word coincides with another word. Here we have the verbs lie and lie. Normally, lie one means to tell something. The second one means to tell something that's not true. And to lie, for instance, to lie on a bed or something like that. That's a completely different meaning. They are written in the same way, but only in let's say in the present or in the infinitive form. In other forms, in the past and past participle, they are completely different. So that's what we call partial homonymy. Partial homonyms can give rise to ambiguity in some contexts. For instance, don't lie in bed. So don't tell lies when you are in bed, or don't really lie physically in bed. But can be distinguished in others, like he lay or he lied in bed. When this example, for instance, lay, it's also associated with another word, with some kind of partial homonymy with another word. Do you know the other word? Lay? Laying egg, for instance, yes?
For example, red, the color, and the verb, the past participle of the verb read.
Yes. Yes, for instance, yes. So in some instances, they will be either written in the same way or pronounced in the same way. That's basically the idea. So we'll say that normally homonymy can be related either to the sound forms of the lexemes or to their spellings. This is what we have been saying. So how they are spoken, how they are pronounced, or how they are written. To make it simple, the way we write is orthography, and the way we speak is, let's say, related to phones and phonemes. So it is the first one, homonymy, with respect to written form, is homography, so related to orthography. In a sense, homo means the same, and graphy means writing. So the same writing. Like these words, how should we read these words? So they are written in the same way, but they are pronounced in different ways. The first one is
bow.
Bow, yes, an instrument of shooting arrows. And the second one is
Bow.
Bow, yes. To bow is to bend, to tilt your head forward. So bow and bow, yes. Here, homography, or the way the words are written, is the same, but they are pronounced differently. Then homonymy with respect to the sound form is homophony, so related to phones, related to sounds, so similar sounds. And like the words steak and steak, they are written differently. They mean completely different things, like bow and bow, but they sound the same in terms of speaking. So remember, with all the meanings that we have seen in homonymy, the meanings are completely different. So we have similarities just in the way they're written, or in the way they are pronounced. Then we have polysemy. So can someone define this word?
Professor?
Yes, Sliman?
It is a bit hard to differentiate between polysemy and homonymy, as far as they share a lot of characteristics, but polysemy is about a word that have some kind of the same meaning, but it means different thing in different contexts. For example, the word head. Head, for example, it can be a head of a mountain, head of a human being, head of a desk, etc. It's depend on the context in where it occurs.
Yes, that's basically everything I was going to say in this slide. So that's basically it. Thank you very much, Mr. Sliman. So polysemic lexeme has several apparently related meanings. So like the example that he has used with head, we'll use it again. The noun head, for instance, seems to have related meaning to the head of person, head of a company, head of a table, head of bed, head of a pen, for instance. So they are all similar. When we say the head of a person, it's related to, let's say, the upper part of a person, the part that has the brain that takes all decisions, for instance, and that's what the head of the company does. And so sometimes it's related to what the head of the human being does, and sometimes it is related to where it is located. Like when we say, for instance, the head of a pen, the head of lettuce or cabbage. Okay. So sometimes it is related to its shape, sometimes it is related to how it functions, but most of the time we have some similarity or relatedness in the meaning of all the words head. You know, when we talk about the head of a company, we talk about different entity than the head of a person. But the word head here and the word head here are related to some extent. That's the idea of polysemy. If we take the anatomical reference as the basic one, the other meanings can be seen as derived from the basic one. So let's say the basic one is in the anatomy of human beings. So this is the location of the head, and this is how it is shaped. Then all the other ones can be either reflecting the general shape of the head, or most abstractly, the relation of the head to the rest of the body. So that's the relationship of head to all the other types of head: head of table, head of lettuce, or head of cabbage, or head of a company. Let's say, yes, we still have a chance to compare the two. So as Sliman said, the distinction between homonymy and polysemy is not an easy one to make. Of course, two lexemes are either identical in form or not, but related in meaning is not a matter of yes or no. It is a matter of more or less. So when we talked about the idea of heads, for instance, head of this and head of that, so it's not really yes or no matter, as they have said here. It's a matter of relatedness. So I think when it comes to even the example that you have said, for instance, I think some of you have given the examples of red, for instance, and red. So in some cases, some people will say they are related, some people will say they are not really related in any way. But I think in homonymy, it's clear. It's in polysemy that we have this kind of confusion. Homonymy is clear. They are similar in sound, they are similar in orthography, but they mean two things that are completely different. The problem is that sometimes those things are not completely different, and that's where we fall in the idea of polysemy. So that's what they are trying to say. Fred asked Betty where his golf clubs were. Fred asked Donna if she had seen his clubs, and Fred asked Charles to help him find his clubs. Let me show you the explanation, then ask you to say whether or not you agree with it. 6 and 7 are requests for information. So I asked Betty where this is, or if you have seen that. So I am asking a question, requesting information. For 8, what do you think about number 8?
Professor, it is an order.
Okay, let's see. You asked someone
or
to help.
Oh, help.
Yes, yes, request for help. So in English, it sounds a bit similar. One is a request for information, and the second one is a request for help or request for action. But if you think about it in Arabic, so the first ones, the 6 and 7, are questions directly.
Yes.
So su'al, yes. But number 8, is talab.
طلب.
Talab,
Yes.
yes. So it's something completely different. In English, it sounds still confusing. Request for information and request for action. So similar. But in Arabic, we'll see the difference. So 6 and 7 are completely questions. And 8 is a request. That's a completely different meaning or entity. So the context in which ask occurs determines whether information or favor is being requested. That wouldn't be normally the same case in other languages. So here we talk about normally they are trying to show that sometimes it is a matter of more or less. So in English, as you have said, in Arabic, it sounds completely different. But in English, asking for information, asking for action. So are we still talking about things that are related? That's a bit debatable, if you get the point. Lexical ambiguity. Next. So do you have questions about this one? I think you have answered the question, so I don't think. So lexical ambiguity. When homonyms can occur in the same position in utterances, the result is lexical ambiguity. So when we can use them in the same position, then we get some kind of ambiguity. Let's see. We can fish in Mehdiya. I think you have seen this example before. So the meaning of the sentence is the meaning of the sentence. Of fishing in Mehdiya, we are capable of doing that. So it's can that refers to ability. And then we put into cans. So tin cans most of the time. So two different meanings. It's the same word that has two different meanings. Or when we say, for instance, I went to the bank, and it can mean the financial institution. It can also mean the side of the river. So it will have two different meanings. Ambiguity occurs also because a longer linguistic form has a literal sense and a figurative sense. Like he kicked the bucket, we have said that before. It has a literal sense, someone just kicking buckets in the street, and the figurative sense means dying. So here we don't know whether we are talking about the first one and second one. To solve ambiguity in semantics, it's just to paraphrase the sentence differently. So it can mean this and it can mean this. You will be given, you can be, I'm not sure about that. Maybe I will give you questions about this ambiguity too. And if that's the case, you will just have to paraphrase the sentence in two ways that show different meanings and different forms of ambiguity. We may also talk about syntactic ambiguity, like this one. Can someone explain the syntactic ambiguity of this sentence?
Professor?
Yes, Naima?
First meaning is that this woman is pretty and tall. Those are
yes.
two adjectives. And you
Yes,
can
two
mention as
adjectives.
an adverb, very tall woman. Quite
Yes, the second one?
It can function as an adverb, modifying
Yes.
adjective, as quite tall woman.
Yes, she is quite tall woman. Yes, so that's exactly it. So, thank you very much, Naima, for your answer. So this must not be confused with referential vagueness. So here we are talking about something else. Some nouns and adjectives are gradable. Here we will talk about mountains and the hill. I have asked this question before. It's really difficult to know what is the difference between where do we stop calling things hills and start calling them mountains. I don't think there is anyone who has an exact answer. So it's just a matter of guess. We also have the idea of tall and short. I would say that this person is short or this person is tall. That's my opinion, maybe depending on how tall or short I am. For other people, that's relative. So here is some kind of referential vagueness. It is vague. It cannot really be decided. For someone, who practices sports, for instance, some distance can be short, and for another one it can be a very long distance. So it depends. So short and long can also be relative and vague. So short depending on what, or in relation to what, can be confusing. Just as there is no absolute line drawn between in the semantics of English between tall and short, there is no absolute distinction between mountain and hill. Okay, and I hope that's clear too. Now going back to the idea of sentence meaning, I think this chapter is very long, or I am just a bit too conscious about how much time it's taken. I hope it's not really that confusing. I think if you think about of what we have said, it's too much. But if you think about, if you understand each element independently, I think they all will come in handy when it comes to analyzing certain sentences and actually performing semantic analysis. Okay, so these are all related in a sense to how we will combine meanings. How sometimes, as we have said, first in previous weeks we have talked just about the meanings and reference of each element independently and how they contribute socially and maybe in expressive meanings to just add some emotional charge to the meanings to the sentences. Today we are talking about how they relate to each other and how they can even be ambiguous, or how can one word be maybe related to other words in different situations or in similar context. So we are just adding more to the analysis of sentences, or widening the possibilities of sentences that you can analyze. So for instance, last week we didn't really know how we deal with ambiguity, and today we are dealing with that. Last week we didn't really know how to deal with sentences that has meaning but doesn't make sense, and I think now you would normally know how to describe that idea. So that's basically the point. The meaning of a sentence derives from the meanings of its constituent lexemes and from the grammatical meanings it contains. We have said that many times before. If you know the meaning of the sentence, you know what conditions are necessary in the word for that sentence to be true. We have said this before too, and we have this example. Albert Thompson opened the first flour mill in Waterton. So for this sentence, this is just some sort of reminder. This sentence will be true if Albert Thompson has actually opened that first flour mill in Waterton. So if this happened, the sentence is true, and that's what we will have. So the meaning of the sentence, if you understand the meaning of sentence, you know what is necessary for this sentence to be true. Because if you remember again, we have talked about the sentence as a complex concept. So it is just a concept, like when a word, for instance, if we say it is a dog, but it is not an animal, we know we are not really talking about dogs. So if you remove the essential element of it, it can never be true. So we can never have a dog that is not an animal. Okay? In this case, if we remove the essential elements of the meaning of the concept, the complex concept here, so if there is no Albert Thompson who opened the first flour mill, then we have removed the essential elements. It cannot be true. This complex concept cannot be true. The core meaning of any sentence or any statement is its truth conditions. So its core meaning equals its truth conditions. This is what we have just said. In semantics, we are not interested in intuitions or hints, but we are interested in the instances where the language of the message implicates some additional meaning. So normally, here they are talking about how to see the detail in a sentence. So normally, you will say what every element there refers to. Then you will move in these sentences, for instance. What is the additional meaning in one of these two sentences?
Professor, the
Yes,
article
Safa?
is added.
Yes, Safa, go ahead.
The article there in the second sentence.
Yes, you see the article there. So what meaning does it contribute? What meaning does it end? Does it add?
It makes the 6 students in the second article more defined, like they are 6 important students, not just any normal 6 students.
Yes, we can say that. Yes, Khadija, Asel.
Maybe the 6 students are known to the person to whom that person is stating or speaking.
Yes. So we it means that those 6 students in the second sentence are known to the addressee or the listener. Yes. So that's exactly what it adds to the meaning. Yes. So they are probably semantically more defined or more known to the listener. Okay. So that's the end of normally what we will have to cover today. Now. You know that next week we'll have some sort of a holiday. I don't know whether you feel that you are working too much in Ramadan. I don't know what you are doing in the other subjects. I know you are studying syntax with Professor Smiko. That's and phonology with phonology and morphology with Professor Jmila. And what? What else?
Discourse analysis.
Discourse analysis.
With the professor now.
Yes. With Professor?
إنام القدوس.
أينام القدسية. Okay. So you are having 4 classes every week.
And also PFA.
And also PFA, yes. Yeah. So you are saying it's too much, so we cannot really double classes. That's what I sense. So we'll not. Yes.
We actually have an extra class with Professor Smiko at Friday, because he said since we can't have class next week, we'll have next week's class this Friday, inshallah.
Yes. Yes, I'm not talking only about this week. I was talking about the fact that in Ramadan we are normally imprisoned somehow. So I thought maybe we can double classes this week and the next week. Even in the holiday, we can have 2 classes at least, so that we will finish maybe before the end of Ramadan, and then maybe we will be free to deal with the other subjects, and you will be done with semantics. Unless you think it's too much to take, for instance, too much to have 2 classes a week, then we'll have just 1 class every week. So in that case, so what do you think? Can we have 2 classes a week or not? Or do you think it's too much?
It's too much.
It's a good
Okay,
idea.
it's too much. Yeah.
Yes, Professor, because we also have the research.
Yes, you have the research. So do you mean you read the chapters every week?
Yes, Professor, I do.
Yes. Yes, I think for a minority, you do read the chapters. So I'm basically asking those who read the chapters, because if it's just about coming here and listening, you are not doing anything. But I'm talking to those who read the chapters and come and try to confirm what they understood. Those are making efforts. So in this case, the second question will be whether or not we can have our class on the holiday. Will you have other classes this holiday?
No, Professor, there are
Professor, there is no classes on holiday, so we can have it.
Yes, so we'll have it next time in the next holiday, okay?
Okay,
so that's at the same time. it's Thursday, so it will be the same time as if there is no holiday. That will be the solution. Okay. When we finish with the lessons of semantics, I will send you some an exercise, as I have said, mock exams, and I expect you to try to answer all the questions there. And then we will move to pragmatics. So we will have a week of practice. Then we will have to move to pragmatics. Then we will have another week of practice. Okay.
Professor, is
that's
that
why
gonna be like
I thought of
the same
doubling
exam?
that.
Like Professor
Yeah.
I said, is it gonna be like the same exam when it
I
comes
will.
to the exam? Yes.
I will show you the worst case scenario, which is some questions in which you will have to analyze and perform analysis. That will be the exam that I want you to have, because honestly, I would say that most students cheat on the DevDay exam. I will say most students either cheat or memorize things by heart, and that's not something that should be in a student of physics. You should be able to analyze something to give different data. So again, I will probably give you a chance to. I will try to give you a chance to analyze, show your individual how your individual abilities to do something on your own, to write something on your own. The sentence will not be, if I give you a sentence to analyze, it will not be, let's say, an extremely challenging sentence. It will be a sentence that we have. It can be a sentence that we have even seen before, or similar to it. So it will be just you improvising a bit. And just do that in correct English, and you will get good marks. So that will be, that's normally how the exam will be. I will try to make it like that, though. We'll have to work for a common exam. If it doesn't work in this way, maybe there will be no common exam. Maybe each professor will have his own exam. Otherwise, you will have options. You will have an option to choose analysis or to choose to write a paragraph as it is. And as I have said before, if you choose to write a paragraph as it is, you will not really get a good mark. I will pay attention to every mistake you make. But if you go for analysis, I can overlook some mistakes. But if it comes to paragraphs, I will correct everything as it should be correct. Okay, so one piece of advice: keep going through these slides, or what we have said, maybe your notes, and try not to memorize them by heart, but try to understand how things work. Okay. I will see you next Thursday. If you have any questions, if you have anything to say.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, and
Thank you for everything.
see you next week. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry for those. Yes, here, and those I have as my supervisees. Can you stay here for a while? My supervisees.
Understood, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, yes, here is it just you or there are other ones?
Me too, Professor.
Yes, Rashida. Okay. Who else?
Me too, Professor.
Okay, Fatima.